Hi, welcome to No Bail Recovery. This show is featuring Jesse, addict alcoholic, and Jazz, addict alcoholic, and we're going to talk about what's your DOC, what it looked like when you went from active addiction into recovery, what got you into the rooms, how that looked, whether it was like rehab or just going straight to like an AA meeting or whatever 12-step meeting. So what was your DOC? What brought you?
Hi, Jess. It's great to be
Hi.
here.
Yeah.
Alcoholism was really my true addiction.
Yeah.
It's not to say that I haven't experienced drugs in the past, but leading up to my experience in 12-step program, it was absolutely alcoholism that brought me there.
Okay. And how old were you when you had your first drink?
I think I was around 12 when I had my
12
first
years old.
drink, and I remember it vividly.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Tell me
Yeah.
about that.
Well, we were at my summer cabin. We have a cabin that's been in the family for years. And my eldest cousin was, I don't know what she was thinking because she was much older. She was probably
Mm-hmm.
30. And she was like, yeah, let's have some drinks. And my sister's a bit older than me. So we were drinking and experimenting with that. But at that time, I didn't recognize that it catches up with you. So as I was drinking, I'm like, I'm not feeling it yet. I'm not feeling it yet. And I kept drinking and drinking and
At 12
drinking.
years old.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And that's what I mean. My eldest cousin did not say, whoa, whoa, this is going to creep up on you. So I got
How would you know?
violently ill with it.
Oh.
Absolutely. And a complete blackout immediately. Like I went right to blackout. So, um, yeah, it was a very humiliating night in a lot of ways. Not at the time because I didn't know what was happening, which was probably good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it could have potentially been dangerous as well because I had ended up throwing up and getting really sick and everything. So we were by the ocean. So they carried me on a door. I don't know where this door came from, but I remember, family members telling me they carried me on a door. And when I say family members, I mean younger people like my cousin and my sister and, not the grown-ups. The grown-ups were asleep, having no idea any of this was happening. And they carried me on a door to the ocean and dumped me in there to clean me up and sober me up.
Wow.
And like I say, I remember none of it, but of course I was soaking wet, but I guess rinsed off to some extent. And then there was a field with really tall grass that was between our cabin and the ocean. And cars were known for going in there and doing donuts and stuff. So it wasn't a safe place for me to be
Right.
passed out.
Oh
But I ended
my.
up laying
Yeah.
there and just kind of sobering up. Yeah, I don't recall a lot about it. So it
Well,
was
you
pretty
lived, and that's
intense.
good. So, so alcohol, mine was alcohol too, and I also dabbled in drugs, and you did dabble in that, but you sort of like alcohol was your main go-to
Absolutely.
for sure.
Not to say that I don't see the potential of having absolutely had a problem with that. I feel really fortunate that the time in my life where I was experimenting with drugs, I that was interrupted by meeting my eldest son's father.
Okay.
And we lived a healthy lifestyle together. So it wasn't something that he was into. Um, and I was, it was not something like I'd never purchased drugs on my own. I'd done them with a colleague,
Right.
honestly. So I
So it
had,
wasn't a big like takeover or nothing, and it was
no,
okay
I
to kind
liked
of.
it though. I liked it more than
I know I like this.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So like I said, I'm glad it got interrupted because so there's no doubt in my mind when people are talking about certain substances that I can relate to how that affected them and how addictive it was because I can to this
Mm-hmm,
day, and
mm-hmm.
I mean that's been over 30 years that I've used any sort of substances like that, and probably over 35 years, and I can still recall the positive feeling that I had as a result of doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I never, and I'd smoked marijuana and so on as a younger person, but it never did it for me.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how many years do you have of sobriety?
Um, May 1st, 2008 was
I
my
love that people
sobriety date.
remember their birthday. It's a special day.
It is a special day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably the most special day of the year for me. I
Yeah.
always feel, it hasn't gotten old because with each year of sobriety, I can always reflect on the year's challenges and recognize how my 12-step program and my sobriety has allowed me to get through whatever that year's, the life things that year has presented.
It's like a reflection.
Yeah.
Something to look forward to. Yes. Yeah. I'm the same way. I get excited about my birthday for sobriety every year. And yeah, it feels more like an accomplishment to be recognized every single year, where it didn't take me any effort to be born. But it takes a lot of effort for me to be sober.
Right. Well, and I like that it's the only holiday. Like Christmas is going to happen, birthdays are going to happen, but I'm the only one that can keep my sobriety date. Like that is a holiday that is not nationally recognized,
right?
And it will not be a holiday if I don't maintain it. Everything else, like Christmas will be Christmas whether I'm drinking or not, and so on. So it's really special to me, and I know that I have to work to keep it. And as I say, the tools that I end up accessing from year to year have been different with the different experiences that I've ended up facing over the years, the growth. And that's what's so cool about 12-step and having a spiritual solution, to be able to, how fluid it is and how much it's not limited to certain situations where it'll help. It's helped me through all kinds of life circumstances.
I like that. Yeah. And was that continuous sobriety? 18 years of continuous sobriety?
Yeah.
Wow. So, like, did something happen at the beginning? Like, what? Like, I always find it so fascinating. Like, that moment when you go, I am going to do this. I am choosing this. And some people, it relapse as a part of their story. That happens. But then eventually, like, relapsers do hit that point too.
That's right.
Right? And so you just knew something. Like, what did when you went into the rooms, like, how did you go in the rooms? Was it rehab or just right into a meeting?
Just went into the rooms. And it was interesting because my marriage had ended. I always, when I look back on it, I'll often say I haven't lost my marriage. I hadn't, because me and my ex-husband still co-parented, and I have a really good relationship with my ex-husband, and I know that's a result of this program. It wasn't as good in the beginning. So we had separated, and I had dated somebody, and he was in 12 steps. And to support him, which I had done years earlier. When I was 18, I dated somebody that was in recovery. And to support him, I would always quit drinking, and he would relapse. But at that time, it hadn't progressed to the point that I couldn't quit. I could quit. I had no problem quitting back then, because I'd always been a troubled drinker. So abstinence was always a good idea. It was always a good idea.
Right.
So, because if I hadn't been so bad at drinking, and when I say bad at drinking, I was not a party, like, bar star running around, woo, the life of the party at all. I was more apt to get really emotional or throw up or pass out or not be able to get myself home from the party because I was so out of it, like all of those types of things. Yeah, I wasn't the fun party chick to hang out with at all. I was like, I'm sure everybody was like, no, not her again, kind of thing. So abstinence.
No, Jesse's drinking.
Yeah.
Who's on this?
And it's true, because even my best friend that was a huge drinker at the time, she didn't mind that I would choose abstinence because I could still have fun with everybody. I didn't feel like with my close friends, because I was always shy. But yeah, so years previously, I dated somebody that was in alcohol support group.
Yeah.
And I had been able to quit, but he relapsed over and over again. But that was my first introduction to a 12-step program. And when I first experienced it, because my alcoholism had not progressed to that state where I couldn't quit, I remember really being not envious in an unhealthy way, just really like, wow, this is really neat that you have this thing. It would have been completely disingenuous of me at that time to be like, oh, I think I'm alcoholic too, because at that time I absolutely could quit drinking. Yeah, I could quit drinking. I realized I was a horrible drinker, but I hadn't struggled to quit. I was able to quit still at that point. But yeah, as it progressed, you asked about how I ended up finding the rooms, and that was, I dated somebody that was
Okay, yeah. So you
in
dated someone, so
recovery.
you're familiar with it, and then when you're
what I
drinking,
yeah, well, what I recognized is because he was abstinent, I was also trying really hard to be abstinent. And as I
Mm,
say, I'd done that in the past. So the real thing that really, one of the things that really stands out to me is I'd always felt that I drank because, like, woe is me, like, oh, I want love, I want connection, so on and so forth. And something that really struck me was him and I having a fight one night. And I kind of secretly went for the first time. Like, I was happy that we fought because I was like, he's not
mm,
drinking. I can drink. And that really stood out to me because I always felt that I drank because I didn't have a good emotional connection with somebody. And him and I were quite, I really enjoyed him. And up until that point, I would have definitely felt that, oh no, I would try and make up the fight. And I found myself not trying to solve the fight because in the back of my mind, I went, I can drink. We don't hang out, I can drink. So
oh,
I didn't
right. You
care
had
about,
this like, yeah, unhealthy backup.
yeah, I didn't care
Yeah,
about
yeah.
fixing the fight. I probably easily could have fixed the fight had I not gotten that spark of like, oh, wait a minute, if we don't hang out, I get to drink tonight. So
Mm,
that really struck me where, okay, the thing that I thought I drank over, which is lack of connection and lack of love, I'm giving up connection and love to drink. So
mm-hmm.
that really struck me. And then it became I shouldn't say the usual, but it became a really ongoing struggle of promising myself daily that, no, this is it. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And then, in the afternoon, like, well, nobody quits drinking on a Tuesday, right? I should do it on. I'll see this week through. I'll finish this
Yeah.
week and then I'll start. Or there's a little bit of wine left, so why would I quit? And and just the excuses. And
The planning of the quitting.
that's right.
I remember doing that so much.
Yeah, and
This
promising
day, that day,
myself.
or slow down here. Like
Yeah,
the planning is the managing the problem, right?
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I like how our literature talks about like being restless, irritable, and discontent when we're not indulging. It's a battle. I would like giving into the temptation. That was um the easy part, and except for the corrosion of my self-esteem. And I
Right.
remember somebody explained that to me, like promising yourself something and then letting yourself down over and over again is the perfect recipe for wrecking your self-esteem. And I thought that makes a lot of sense because I'm
Oh,
promising myself, whether anybody
yeah,
is
yeah.
holding me accountable to it or not. Because I will say, even if my ex-husband was here, any family members, nobody was trying to rescue me or saying, oh man, you got to really watch this, you got to slow down, you got to stop.
I find not often does that happen, right? Because I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes alcoholics or addicts are left with themselves for a time. This is just what I've experienced, to then see that it has to be you that wants it, right? Like some
Mm-hmm.
people do have a family come in and do intervention,
Yeah,
but like I think like for the real change, it almost has to come from the person, like the core
that's
of
right.
like I'm alone, no one's coming.
Yeah,
I
that's
gotta
right.
I gotta come in for me,
Yeah,
you
and
know?
and you're exactly right because my ultimate bottom, I was very depressed, very very depressed, and I remember like like as I say, I wasn't woohoo, let's party. I remember walking and purchasing
Like an
my last
emotional
bottle of
drunk.
wine, and I was crying as I'm like,
I'm still having a good time.
yeah, yeah, this is amazing. I'm bawling my head off as I'm walking
Sweet,
up to
sweet
the
denial.
right, and because I knew it was a bad idea. I was depressed. I know alcohol's a depressant, and I knew that it was sort of a Russian roulette. Like, this is not going to cheer me up, likely.
But it's
It's probably,
comfortable to go to it, right?
mm,
You're addicted to the habit and the ritual as well.
absolutely. And it feels like the friend. It
Oh,
does. The
totally.
unconditional love, the friend that never is
On
going to let me
demand.
down.
The
Yes.
one-way relationship, right? You can always just take and have, right? You don't have to give
Yeah.
anything to it.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. They're for you when you want it. But I did sense the night of my last drink that it was not wise to be drinking in my frame of mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember waking up in the morning and recognizing it's like, wow, not that I did anything rash or anything like that, but I recognized in the morning, I thought, I am, I mean, I wouldn't have put the word powerless to it, but it definitely speaks to powerlessness because I went into that knowing it was a horrible idea, given my mental headspace, and I did it
Mm-hmm.
anyways.
Mm.
And
So like lost the control, the will, the power, right? Like,
that's right. Yeah.
yeah.
And although I definitely quit drinking for myself, it was certainly motivated by the fact I've got children. I've got
Mm-hmm.
children. They need a mother, and not just any mother, not like,
They need the mother they have.
yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
a mother that's well. And that was the other part of the
So
equation.
important.
Yeah, because I
Yeah.
recognized I want to raise happy children. And a lot of people would look at me at that time and they would have identified me as a happy person. But
On the
so much of
surface.
that was false. So much of that was a mask, play acting as a happy person. And I
Mm-hmm.
recognized I went to raise authentically happy people, I'm going to have to figure something out. And I didn't know what I would find in a 12-step program. I didn't know that that I would truly find happiness and that sort of thing. But I knew that I had to eliminate the drinking to have any hope on raising happy children.
Good for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Like great awareness.
Well,
Yeah.
and my eldest son was 12, so it was coming to the point, I guess because I took my first drink at 12. And interestingly enough, I grew up with parents that didn't drink, and they didn't drink. It was religious, and we grew up like that. And I remember probably myself around the age of 12 when I also had drank for the first time. My parents had kind of gotten back into drinking. They were really active with a dancing group, like they did, like, couples dancing and stuff, and part of that ended up with them socializing and using alcohol. So it was very, very strange at that age.
So it was like okay now.
Yeah,
Drinking was okay. And they would
absolutely.
say it was probably like moderate to more.
Yeah, it was and it was, well, because my parents were out of practice with drinking. Like, I remember hearing them get sick, and like it was a real cultural change in our family, and it was
You
very
noticed the
a
change. Yeah.
hundred
So your
percent.
family was different after they started
Absolutely.
doing that.
Yes.
Interesting.
And
And
my and
sorry.
oh,
And
sorry.
the thing is like um, adults, we like, okay, I can only speak for myself, but like just because my kid doesn't say something to me doesn't mean there isn't an impact or that something isn't happening for them with the
Absolutely.
things I'm doing as an adult, as
Mm,
a parent, right? Like, and I think sometimes that gets really overlooked with kids is that because they aren't voicing it up and they aren't sticking up to that big adult, that they don't feel or see anything,
that's
but
right.
they are. And so I love that you've brought that up about your experience, just like our family changed.
Absolutely. And it was so, you really nailed it when you said that, because I couldn't label it as, it wasn't as though my dad was drinking and becoming violent or anything. If anything, he was happy go lucky and so on. But it was very unsettling. It was
Mm-hmm.
very, my footing was like everything that I'd known and grown up with we don't drink, da da da. And
Oh, so it's almost like it's so confusing, right, for a child because it's like the belief system of the family changed as well.
the
So it's like now,
values,
yeah, the values change, which is confusing, right? So that inconsistency shows up where now it's like the kid is wondering, well, why are we from this way now to this way? And then you
absolutely.
don't have that, and not to blame anyone.
No,
This is just the way it goes.
observing
But
how it went.
yeah, is that like that parent, like what I do as a parent really does affect my children, right? So like, could there have been something that someone could have done where they explained that,
Hmm.
or if you had a relationship with your child to
Well,
like understand what's happening.
absolutely. And the identifying factor at such at such an age, 12 years
Yeah.
old, at such a certain age in my life, um, it's very interesting because, as I say, the reason for them not drinking was religious, and my mom had hurt herself and she wasn't getting better. So there was a real
Mm.
shift, and there was absolutely this idea that God has let us down.
Mm.
I'm not recovering. So this whole shift, even I was disturbed even going to church wearing pants. It was like, what is happening? My
Mhm.
world
Mhm.
is, as I know it, is changed completely. And I mean, not that that's traumatizing. I'm not trying to pass it off that, oh, this was the beginning of the end for me because I had to wear pants to church. But it was recognizing everything that I had known, everything that I had been raised with,
Mhm.
including,
Mhm.
the values, sort of Christian values, like you'll get married to one man, and all of those types of ideas that I was raised with shifted at that very tender age.
Right, tender age. And that's the thing, like children, the world is large and bright and everything does go in. So little things can even feel like amplified, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um, yeah, like as a parent, you're on the record. Right? Like
absolutely.
maybe the child doesn't say it now, but like they'll tell you later.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
yeah,
note, but
yeah,
you did this. And I hear that all the time, even from my kids now. You know,
that's
they're
right.
always watching, which
Well,
does make me have better behavior.
hmm
Yeah.
well, and the one thing that I really appreciate about the 12-step programs and what my kids have experienced with me and my healing journey
Hmm.
is I've just become so happy. Well, I'll put it this way. I remember hearing years ago at a business training, and they said, if you resolve a problem with a customer really well, you'll have more loyalty and a better relationship with that customer than if the problem never happened. And I liken that to my relationship with my children. Because I faced a problem and I found a healthy solution to it
Yeah, I
and
love
got
that.
better,
Yeah.
I feel that was more of a hands-on lesson for my children, seeing mom
Hmm.
fall down, get help, and get well, more than if it had been a educational lesson of, well, if you ever have problems, kids, this is what you do. They experienced me
Getting back up.
struggle, getting back up,
Yeah.
finding a solution, and I know it's had a really positive impact on their life. My recovery, it has absolutely made
Hmm.
me the mother that I've been, and the ripple effect of that
Yes. Yeah.
recently, because I was the cool mom, but I wasn't the cool mom because I partied with the kids. I was the cool mom because I could be called at 3 o'clock in the morning by any one of the friends, and they needed me, I could be
Hmm.
there. They knew I was always available.
Hmm.
I had them to the home a lot. My home was a safe place. Several of the kids turned to me in their darkest hours, and I helped get them counseling. And I
Hmm.
never did that um, disrespectfully to their parents. That was always really important to
Yeah, that was
me.
just like your way of like really being there for your kids, being available, and they know that they can call on you and trust you, and I think that's really great.
Yeah,
You
being a
know,
safe
and
grown up.
yeah, being a safe grown up, like being that beacon, and I'm
Hmm.
gonna come get you. Like, and
Yeah.
and I love that you showed the repair. Like you were in the active addiction, they maybe experienced you one way, but then you change into another way, and like that transformation, like that's beautiful. Like you should
Yeah.
be really proud of yourself.
Yeah, I think that I don't think, like, I feel that their lives and their experience growing up is, if anything, enriched because of me struggling, because I think it gave them permission to know that, yes, people have
Oh yeah,
problems.
they can fall too, make
Yeah,
mistakes
people have
too, and
problems,
yeah,
right? What
people
if
have
mom
problems.
was like,
Yeah,
oh, la 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 la,
always
everything's fine,
perfect.
nothing's
That's a
wrong.
problem.
Yeah, because I think if we grow up thinking everybody's fine around us, which I think I did, we didn't talk a lot about feelings and so on growing up. And I
I
was
think that's new for the world.
irate,
Feelings.
yeah, and
Yeah.
expressing them. And so
Yes.
I was experiencing this, you know, displacement feeling different. Like everybody else seems like they're functioning in a way that I internally do not feel that I'm meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I really like about the spiritual aspect,
Yes.
the malady portion of, addiction and so on, is because far before I ever had trouble drinking or,
Yeah.
with any substance abuse or misuse, I was sad in a way that I didn't understand. And that has come to be very, it makes so much sense to me, recognizing that I am
Yeah.
in recovery, I needed recovery
Mm-hmm.
and a spiritual answer to
Mm-hmm.
the spiritual malady.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Okay. Quick pause. We will be right back. We are back. I had a little interruption there because I have children. So, anyways,
Yeah,
you recovered with the spiritual program. You showed the kids that. That's amazing.
absolutely. And to see them go on as adults to have spirituality, both of them have it in their own way in their life,
Yeah,
but it
yeah.
is prevalent, um, and that's really been gratifying too. I find that, as I explained, growing up in quite a very Christian family,
Mm-hmm.
and there was and it's not to
Can I
say,
ask, like very Christian? Okay, what do you mean by that?
well, they're not drinking,
Oh, so
going
like
to,
so not only so yeah, like because I'm Catholic and spiritual, but I'm just wondering, like, it sounds like it was like very disciplined at home, but then
mm-hmm.
very, very disciplined with church and stuff, which is like you got to go to church and be consistent. But like, it sounds like your experience was a bit like strict. Is that
It
correct?
was
Or
strict, and it was all I knew, and I felt safe. And frankly, I feel like my parents were really on the right track.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
really have always believed that my bottom was as high as it was, because from a young age to have it programmed like drinking's bad,
Oh, let me
that
back
would have.
up there. I
Mm-hmm.
like what you said there. Like, my bottom was as high as it was. So it's like you're kind of saying that your bottom wasn't really low and like awful, but you had a high bottom.
Yes,
That's
and
so cool.
well, and it's interesting too, because I'm glad we got chatting about this, because I've always said, well, I've kind of had a high bottom when I compare my story, or I'm in other 12-step programs and people are
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
identifying like the shambles and the real
Right,
struggles
right.
that they've been able to,
Because that's not always the case, right?
endure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because I've always said the worst combination, in my opinion, is addiction and resilience. I don't think being resilient is your friend when you're an addict, because you can take so much more, hence getting a lower bottom, right? I'm I was not nearly as resilient as some of the people that I know. Where I did change,
Maybe you knew that about yourself.
yeah, but I'll say this, where I did change my perception, like I've always identified, because on the surface, the amount of drinking, the frequency, I never became a daily drinker. I never became morning drinker, but
Mm-hmm.
the obsession was real. Um, but close to daily. Um,
Like you knew something wasn't like this. This is probably an issue. It's based, yeah. So you
Absolutely,
had
because
like the knowing.
even when I wasn't drinking, I
Yeah,
was thinking about drinking. I was planning
yeah.
my drinking. I was frustrated that I wasn't, that if there was drinking without consequences or anybody noticing, I would have done that.
Mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
where I recognized, so like I say, it to the naked eye, it might have appeared that I didn't hit a low bottom. And I used to identify that way and say, like, oh yeah, I'm quite high bottom alcoholic. Then it occurred to me, if you are not feeling like being here anymore, how low of a bottom is that? That's as low as it gets. Because I know that I worked at a agency, a local agency, where we were helping street people and so on. And so many of those people had never gotten to a place of feeling like, I want to end it all. They were quite, I mean, they
Oh, so
recognized,
they were like they were. on the streets doing their thing, but still were like, well, I don't want to die.
That's right. And that hence the resiliency that I'm talking about that I think can almost be a problem. Like I was brought to my knees mentally so much sooner. So it's one of those weird things because as I say, I identified as a high bottom alcoholic, but then when I recognized that wanting to not be alive anymore, that it is that there's no lower bottom than that.
Yeah, I got to that too. And I like that you brought up like your story is high bottom because you don't always have to go to the worst bottom to make a change with trying to get sober in your life or trying to make a change, or like you can just get to a psychological place.
Yeah.
And like you were kind of like in despair and hopeless, but in kind of like a bit of an awareness of like, well, you know, I can continue, or like I'm here, and if I did do this, I'd kept going, it would be there, so I could stop now. Like, and you know, I think that's so cool that you have a high bottom because I mean, to keep going lower is like it's just more it's more destruction and destructive. Yeah, in the wrong, you know, it's
and
like,
and I recognize if
brutal.
it hadn't been for my children,
Yeah,
it probably would have gotten worse. And that's something like later into my recovery, I did go to school for addictions counseling and community support worker, which is not a field that I've practiced in much. And one thing that I really liked about what my instructor told me, which is it's a great perspective, just not all 12 step, and what she shared and really hit home and certainly suited my situation is when people say strictly, you can only do this for yourself. And ultimately, yes, but I got to a place of doing it for myself because I didn't want my children to have that mother, you know? So if I didn't have children,
so your reason is different but stronger for you. Like that's cool. That's like that. Like I know mine's kind of the same but opposite. Like I couldn't get sober for my kids, but I didn't want to die, and I was at a really bad bottom, and I was like I can't stop and do this. I can't get out, and I'm gonna tell someone I'm gonna die. And I remember looking at my kids and like I'm like I can't even get sober for them. Like you know, like so I think a lot of mothers do get to that point of like I need to get sober for my kids.
Yeah,
you know,
but
so it can happen in different ways,
right?
Yeah.
And the battle of like what you're talking about, because if it was as simple as me, because I recognized, okay, drinking frequently is not like the best mother thing, you know, because there were times prior to getting into recovery that I would like, oh, we were going to go to the park. I didn't tell them maybe, but I'd think we'll go to the park. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I can't drink at the park. So we're not going to the park. So
I used to drink at the
did
park.
not, yeah. So
I was a bad mom.
But it's not like I was some saint that was like, I'm going to be the best mother ever. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's not like I didn't do things that would have compromised my ideal of being the perfect parent. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so at that point, if it was as simple as I'm going to quit for my kids, I would have quit way before. You know what I mean? So it's an interesting.
You kind of were at a place, and then it was like it's also good enough reason that I also don't want to show this for my children.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, with your bottom, not wanting to die, and that's what I knew was coming. Like I woke up that morning and went, the fact that I haven't done something stupid is a miracle.
I'm lucky so far. Like I'm lucky this far.
Yeah, but it was very clear to me that morning for some reason. Like it was like you dodged a bullet. You need to be grateful. Be grateful that you got through this night with your headspace and a couple bottles of wine in, and you woke up to tell the tale and to parent your children for another day. Something's got to change, right? And it was pretty evident, and
like the walls start to close in, you know, and like I know for me, like I had one of before the end of all my drinking, I fell down the stairs once hard,
right?
And I was like, I can't believe I lived through that. And it looked like I was in a car accident when I woke up the next day, and I was like, I am out of control. Like,
Right.
I'm not going to make it if I don't make a change here. I got to decide what I want, and like,
Yes.
it was like those walls are caving in of like, there's not many places I can go here. An
Right.
accident's going to take me out. Like, something's going to take me out.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
So
coming
I
to.
started to think about that, in my drunken state.
Well, and it's interesting that you say that too, because I've often said, people will talk about, oh, where's your bottom? And the saying, when you stop digging. And I really understand why people say that. But I almost think somebody's bottom, it's like you're backing off up to a cliff and you might fall off the cliff, right? Like it's not as simple as what,
right?
well,
like almost
you're
feel like
taking your chances because, like they say, when you stop digging, but that implies that you get to stop digging and there's no circumstance that decides for you, like death. People haven't stopped digging.
The choice is done at that point.
Yeah,
there's no more options.
They don't have a choice. They've not been able to have that moment of clarity, where, I'll stop digging.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard
in the midst of digging. They, like, life has taken over and circumstances have taken that. It's like, again, it's never, if people could stop digging, they would stop digging. So I always think of like a bottom. It's more like backing up, backing up, backing up, and at some point there's a cliff that you're going to fall off of. And you may get lucky and decide to stop backing up before you hit it, or you might fall off the cliff, which I think that's some better illustration of the disease as opposed to like, I'm digging, 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 because that implies that I can just, oh, you know what, I'm going to stop. When you're backing up.
Because there's no choice when you're inactive, right?
Yeah.
You think because you can like drink here, drink there, you're exercising control, that's like so much of a choice. It's not. I think choice and control are two different things, right? Like, that could sound complicated, but I think you do get a bit of you give up your will when you're inactive. And it gets to a point where and not everybody has this like epiphany of like, I should stop quitting. Like, sometimes it comes in all different ways.
That's right.
Right? Like,
and it's so
maybe you end up in jail or in a car accident, or maybe your family comes to you. Like, there's thousands of stories out there where people get to a bottom of any level and decide to maybe make a change. And I think that's the best message that we can like.
Yes. And hopefully it is before you back off the cliff by accident,
Yeah.
Like, that's the sad part. I'm so grateful for the clarity before I backed up too far and there was no coming back, and recognizing. And that's where I think my kids came into it. I sensed I'm playing with something and it's getting more and more dangerous.
I love that. Okay, so we'll probably start wrapping up here. What can you say that's just like really, what's kept you sober for the 18 years? Like, what's been working for you for this for all this time?
I definitely
like, what do you do for your recovery?
Yeah.
In other words,
I do attend 12-step meetings regularly still.
Yeah.
And at this stage, often, because I do not feel like the problem has been removed at this point in my life. I mean, I follow that quickly with, as long as I keep spiritually fit. And keeping spiritually fit does involve going to meetings. And my feeling when going to a 12-step program these days is more of a place of, what can I share and how can I be of support to others? And just because the time is there. Can I
add to that? Like, I think, in the beginning, sometimes it can be, there's so many losses that you need to fill, right? Like, the focus is to refill with healthy.
Yeah, you need to suck everything that you can out of a meeting just to survive. That's how I felt in the beginning. Yeah. And then now it's not I don't have the same.
You're maintaining, feeling. So it's not as much of like fill. Because you stay close to the program too, I'm sure, right?
I do. And I work with others, definitely. And I think just believing in the life that I've found, right? Like my spiritual growth has proven to me time and time again, much like I said, every year that I celebrate my recovery, I
Mm-hmm.
can look at the circumstances that I faced during that previous year, and I recognize wholeheartedly that it is my program that has allowed me to face those challenges to the best of my ability, and I can't imagine how some of those challenges would have looked if I didn't have recovery.
No doubt. So it's like you get to almost keep the momentum of the recovery just by like maintaining and saying, like
Acknowledging the value it's
that
brought to my
it's
life.
acknowledging the value, but it's not like life things pull you down. Like they'll happen, and yes, it might affect you, but it's like the pull you down doesn't keep you down. It's like keep you still kind of keep going forward, whether that's
Yeah.
like flat and up or like
Mm-hmm.
um
Yeah, it's just become such a way of life. Like I can't
me
imagine
too, yeah.
drinking at a problem, you know? And so
And
many
that
of
feels
the
like so I think of that too. I'm like, I can't imagine going to a liquor store and drinking. I would be like crazy.
it does. It feels nuts. Like it feels like talk about adding to the problem. Talk about like, it's like, oh, I'm really struggling here. Let me hammer my left foot and become lame to care, like it's that crazy, right? Like
Yeah,
going and
yeah.
disabling yourself, incapacitating
Because it
yourself by
doesn't fix the
being
problem,
not even
right?
close.
No, it's
Like
sort
like
of like you buy fake time.
yeah, and yeah, so recognize, yeah, you can't fix a problem with a problem.
Yeah,
So you have to
it's
dig
just avoiding the
deeper into
problem.
the
Yeah.
solution.
Mm.
Yeah. And it's so fleeting and temporary. Like, because when you say avoiding the problem, I wish that I could have it, not that I wish at all, but it would be far different than the reality. If I was to experience a difficulty, go to the liquor store, drink, and have this temporary relief, I don't believe that would give me any temporary relief. I think immediately the guilt, the shame, the loss of my sobriety. So I don't feel like I would have a free night where I just let all
Yeah,
my
yeah,
cares
yeah,
go.
yeah,
I don't think that would be my experience at
yeah,
all.
yeah.
Like talk about
I feel
letting
like that
myself
too.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I think that if I was to drink, I would be more worried about the loss of my recovery,
Oh,
the
I
days, the years, the everything I built, and like I would cringe to think about like going back in the room. I would because I've seen so many people come back in the rooms after relapse, and I'm so proud of them for that. Like it's
mm-hmm.
remarkable, right? It takes a lot of courage to face that, but I that's what I weigh out is like
Oh,
I don't
I
want to wreck what I have here.
no. And I it's good that you're humble enough to imagine yourself going back, because I am terrified, even with all this recovery that I've worked with, or tried to build into my life. I fear my ego would prevent me from returning.
Mm.
I certainly cannot see having a one night slip after 18 years and just, return to the program, pick myself up. Like, I
Yeah.
don't think that's how it
Yeah,
would go
right? Like that
down.
ego's like ready to bite.
100%. It would be ugly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be ugly.
Well, thank you so much for coming here and sharing your story on getting sober and what your DOC is and your high bottom. I love that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
So thank you, Jesse.
Thank
And we will
you.
see you guys at the next one. Thanks for
Yeah,
being
thank
here.
you.